This video is just going to be a companion to the wiring guide that I'm going to give in full detail on Focus Fanatics. I just wanted to give just a video description of what all the connections, where they go and what the purpose of them is. This is going to assume that you have already run all the wires through your firewall, so I'm only going to be dealing with the connections on the inside. Really, that's all. There is no wires that actually have to be connected in the engine bay except for the ground, which is going to go on the top mounting bolt. Included on Focus Fanatics, there's going to be this wiring guide template. Basically, what it's going to show is the pin numbers from the servo, and these are all labeled 1 through 10. Only 1 through 10 are used except for 2 and 8. Pin 1, basically its function, it shows on here, it turns on the light on the gauge cluster. From the servo, it's a white-black wire. I suggest that you do after the connection, because you're going to be cutting the harness right here. I suggest that you probably get about a 5-foot length wire. It's pretty general in these measurements. They're not exact, so they should be pretty liberal on how much wire that you need, so you might be able to get away with shorter wire. In my harness itself, I used an orange-white wire, and the final connection is going to go to pin number 4 on the gauge cluster harness. You are actually going to insert a wire from that you're going to steal from like the clock spring connector from the donor car, because all the connectors off of this are the same. Once you get them out of this plastic piece, they're the same exact type of connectors that or wire ends that go into the gauge cluster. Pin number 3 is our vehicle sensor, speed sensor input. That basically just tells the servo how fast the car is going and how much it needs to compensate to get to the speed that you want. From the sensor, it's white-blue. You're going to need about 5 feet, because this is actually going over to where the radio is. There's a green-white wire over there in your radio area that the radio uses for the feature. It's the volume control. When your speed goes up and down, the faster you go, the louder the radio gets, if you like that feature. I personally don't use it, so in the video that I'm showing on the install, I'm not actually going to be using that connector. I'm just going to butt connect right to that green-white wire. But if you still want to use that, then I'll show you how to, also in there, how to keep using that. On here, my harness, it's a green-black wire. Or black-blue wire. That's the longest wire I have on there. Because that and the gauge cluster wire are about the longest wires that you're actually going to need. Pin number 4 are the brake lights on. Basically, this just gets the signal, splices into the signal of the stop lamp switch. That's going to be already there in your car, and I told you to go ahead and get this connector, because it's a lot easier to make the connections. Actually, you know, it really doesn't even matter if you have the connector or not. Either way, you're going to be cutting yours basically off, so disregard that. On pin number 5 from the servo, that's your steering wheel signal out. That's going to be a white wire. On my harness, after the splice, it's green-red, and that's going to clock spring connector number 4. Pin number 6 is the steering wheel signal in. Goes complementary with pin 5. It's brown color. You're going to need about 4 feet. That's going to get you from here to the clock spring in about 4 feet, with just enough to reach those ends there. And that's going to pin number 5 on the clock spring. Pin number 7 is your actual power. That's going to the servo. That is where your add-a-fuse is going to come into play. You're going to need a 10 amp fuse, and this add-a-fuse, I got this at AutoZone for pretty cheap. I think it was like $4. You're going to need to splice the wire onto that. And mine's a green-black. Now this one's the only special thing that you're going to have to remember to do is don't make that connection until you get your 2-foot wire, and that's what's down on here. It says clock spring number 6. This is actually the power that goes to the switches, and this is actually going to join with that same add-a-fuse with the wire from pin 7 on the servo. So make sure that before you actually crimp that wire that both of those are in that connection. Pin number 9, how hard are the brakes where the brakes applied? That's where the brake pedal position switch comes into play. You are going to need to take this off a junk car or donor car or whatever. You're going to need about 4 foot wire, just same as for the stop lamp switch, because they're in generally the same exact location. And there's 2 connections that you're going to need to make on that. Okay, so now assume that you've already gotten through the firewall with your wires. On mine here, the first one that you're going to want to just go ahead and take off to the side. You don't need to electrical tape up anymore for a little bit. Mine's a green-black. That's the 12 volt from to the servo. So that I'm just going to go ahead and fold off for now. Next up, I'd say go to the brakes. That's going to be a little bit easier to get to, and you can just go ahead and tape that stuff up and not have to worry about it anymore. The brakes from the servo, you're going to need pin number 9's wire and also pin number 4's wire. So mine on here, green yellow. I also have a green yellow on it at the end, and then also green blue and green blue. So I have green blue, green yellow. Okay, those are my 2 wires, and try to keep this as neat as possible and keep them untangled from everything else. It'll just make your life a little bit easier when you have to go through an electrical tape. These connections you can go ahead and make. The first one we can do is the green-blue. That actually splices into the stop lamp switch. On your car, you're going to have the stop lamp switch. Go ahead and take the pin or the metal clip off, and you're just going to want to go ahead and take your wire cutters and cut it off, and so you'll be left with a couple inches of wire, and go ahead and strip the ends off, because you're going to be basically splicing into both of these for the stop lamp switch and also for the servo wire. So on here, my green-blue wire is actually going to splice together with this green-red wire. To make this connection, you can go ahead and put your wire connector on there. And any wire connectors that you see me do in here, I'm just doing a really crappy job just to go ahead and just give you the general idea. Now there's the green-red wire that's going to be on the other side of your cut end. You're going to want to join that with that and stuff both of those wires in, and then go ahead and crimp that down. So just imagine that there's another wire in there, and that's what that connection is going to be. And again, these are really crappy. Yeah, like say I didn't even make that. But you know what? It's just going to give you the general idea. And I hate these wire connectors. I wouldn't, or wire strippers. I wouldn't recommend them. Get the standard ones. They're a lot easier to use. Okay, for example purposes, that'll work. Your next wire is going to be pin number 9. It's green yellow. On here, it's also green yellow for my wire harness. That's going to, as it says, brake pedal position sensor pin 1. There is 2 pins on here. I'm not sure if it exactly matters which one is, I mean it's just a switch that makes a connection in between, but I'd just go ahead and go with what it says. Pin number 1, if you're looking at here, is on the left. Pin number 2 is on the right. I already have the splice on there. If you want to go ahead and get yours ready before you actually have everything put in the engine bay, it makes it, or the interior, it makes it a lot easier. So pin 1 goes to pin 9 on the servo. Go ahead and splice that down. And now for this one, pin number 2, you can either go the same way. You know what? To make it uniform, we'll just imagine, yeah, it's going the same way. Go ahead and splice on to your stop lamp switch on the green-white. And then the pin number 2 wire is just going to go directly into the other end with the other side of the green-white wire. So it just shares the power signal. Just like that. So now with this, you're pretty much done, or you are done with the brakes now. Just imagine that there's also a green-white wire going to wherever it was going to, and then also a green-red or a red-green wire going to where it was. So now you're done with the brakes. You can go ahead and tape all that up and get all that out of the way. Next up is going to be the wires going to the clock spring. On my harness here, that's going to be green. No, it's going to be black, yellow, and also green, red. So I'll go ahead and get those detangled from there. You're going to basically run up those under the steering column. On mine here, let's see, the green-red comes from pin 5 on the servo, and we're going to clock spring connector pin number 4. And so imagine that you've already inserted your 3 wires into your clock spring connector. There's going to be a green, yellow, a brown, or a white. It's pretty easy to keep with the stock colors, but for some reason if you break one of the wires, it doesn't really matter what wire color it is as long as you remember which pin goes to what. So on here, pin number 4 is the white wire, so I can go ahead and connect that to my green-red, like so. Okay, and then you got your, what was it, the brown wire from pin number 6 on the servo. That's going to pin number 5, which is also the brown wire on mine. So it's right next to the white. Go ahead and splice that down. Okay, and then the last wire you're going to have up there is this green-yellow wire. If you remember what I told you, we're going to the attafuse now. You're going to need about a 2-foot long wire. It's really about 18 inches or so. Go ahead and have that spliced on there. And you might notice I'm not stripping these wires. Again, like I said, this is just illustration purposes only. You will actually need to strip back the wire and do the proper connections in the wire splice. And while you're up there, you can go ahead and electrical tape this all up nice and pretty. And then take your green-white or green-yellow wire and route it over to your 12 volts from the servo, or to the servo, which is normally a green-white wire. On my harness, it's green-black. Go ahead and strip those back and get those ready. And then that's just going to go directly into the attafuse wire. So just make that connection, and now you have power for everything at that point. And that's that. Just go ahead and tape up those wires so they look pretty and out of the way. The last wires you got to worry about, there's 2 left. There's the vehicle speed sensor and then the gauge cluster. If you really don't want to take apart your gauge cluster area, it's actually pretty simple. You don't have to do this, but I mean the dealer kit itself didn't even actually do that. But I recommend it. I like having the light. So basically you're going to take apart your where the bezel, where the gauge cluster is, and then you're going to insert a wire, preferably from the basically the clock spring connector. Like I said, you're just going to steal one of these wires, not from your car, but from the junk car or the donor car. If you have this harness, on the 2000, 2001, it's easy to get wires out. This one, it's a real pain because you'd have to have a super itty bitty tiny tool. So I actually just used some pliers and I actually broke this apart, and I was able to fish out the wires that I needed for the new car. So just take one of these. If you only have like a 6 or 7 inch length, that's fine. Your 5 foot should be enough to reach that. So when you're up there, You just kind of route that wire up to the gauge cluster area, and then splice that onto the pin number, or a wire that's going to be inserted into pin number 4 on your gauge cluster. Last thing you got to worry about is your vehicle speed sensor. This is actually the input that makes everything work. So the servo actually knows how fast you're going and how fast it needs to maintain you. The dealer kit told me to go to pin number 28 on the ECU or PCM. So that's all the way over there in the passenger side. I actually used a wiring diagram and found that the green-white wire that goes to the stereo, there should only be one. At least that's what the wiring diagrams for 2000 to 2007 say. If you just cut that off and take it from the source and then just do a butt connector on there, that's going to be your vehicle speed sensor wire, and you don't have to worry about it. It's actually all you need to do. If you wanted to keep the function of having that, just do the same thing like you would with the brake pedal position. Go ahead and cut the wire in half, give yourself a couple inches to play with, and then stick this wire, the wire from pin number 3. Stick that in there along with one of either the input or the output of the vehicle speed sensor wire that goes to the radio, and then just connect your other end to the radio in that way. So you'll have 2 wires on one side and 1 wire on the other side. And then after that, you're pretty much all wired up. Next up is going to be the final video, and that's just going to show you exactly the orientation and what everything should look like once you have everything wired up, and that should be it.